Hi everybody, welcome to the Davis Food Co-op Teaching Kitchen. We have finished our local flavors recipe challenge and we picked our favorites from each category. So I am going to be making a grapefruit cake that was submitted as part of our baker's challenge. And let's get started. So the first thing that you'll need to do is preheat your oven to 375. I already did that. So we can go ahead and get started on everything else. So first it says to oil a cake pan or a tray, or a loaf tray, and I just grabbed a regular square, it looks like it's an 8x9 pan, and I'm just gonna oil it. I just put a little bit of canola oil in there. It doesn't specify what kind, so I'm just gonna use the other oil that I'm gonna use in it. And I'm just going to use my hand to help spread it around in there. Okay, I got the whole thing lightly coated with some oil. And then it says that we need to mix the wet ingredients, mix the dry ingredients, and then combine them together. So we'll start with the wet ingredients. So we need a 1/3 cup of a neutral oil. We're gonna need some white vinegar, some vanilla, and then also a bunch of grapefruit juice. It says we're gonna need about a cup. Preferably fresh, and it takes 3 to 4 grapefruits. I actually grabbed 5 just in case because I want to make sure I get that whole cup, and then we're going to need a little bit for the icing also. Okay, so we need a 1/3 of a cup of neutral oil, and I just have canola oil here. Okay, it says that we'll need a tablespoon of white vinegar. A teaspoon of vanilla extract, if it wants to open. Okay, and then the only other wet ingredients is going to be the grapefruit juice, and then there's also 2 tablespoons of zest, and I'm going to add the zest into the wet ingredients. And it says we need 2 tablespoons. I'm gonna eyeball this a little bit because it's kind of hard to actually measure out zest. So I just have my zester, and I'm just gonna put it straight into my wet ingredients, and it says that I need 2 tablespoons. You always want to zest first too before you juice. I've definitely made this mistake multiple times. It's really hard to zest already juiced halves of citrus. So if something calls for zest, make sure to do that part first. Okay, I'd say we're almost there. Okay, that looks like 2 tablespoons. So it's about the zest from 1 medium grapefruit. And then before I juice them, I'm going to turn them on their side and just kind of roll them a little bit. It helps, I guess, break up all the pulp pieces in there to make it a little bit easier to juice it. And I'm gonna grab a big measuring cup. Just so that way I don't end up getting juice everywhere as I try and do this. I don't know if this is actually going to fit in here, but I'm going to try. This is meant for an orange, and this is a really big grapefruit. Ooh, I think I can do it. It mostly fits. There's still so much juice left in there. I'm gonna do it with my hands, so it doesn't quite get smushed enough in there. So I'll just juice it, but over my hand, so that way I can catch any seeds. And it doesn't say to strain it or anything, so I'm assuming any pulp that makes its way in there is gonna be okay. We already have some zest in there, so the pulp will probably break down when we cook it. Okay, so we got our cup of grapefruit juice, and I'm just going to add that in with the rest of my wet ingredients. And then that's all of my wet ingredients. So I'm gonna set that aside and just kind of clean up a little bit of my area of stuff that I won't need anymore. Or no, I might still need these grapefruits in a minute because I'll need more juice for the icing. So I'm actually not gonna clear it away. Okay. Now I'm gonna do my dry ingredients. So we're gonna need 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour. We're going to need baking soda and baking powder and brown sugar, some salt, and that's it. Okay. So we're going to need a teaspoon of baking soda. And 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay. And then it says up to 1/2 cup of brown sugar. Or you can use other types of sugar like turbinado sugar. So I guess I'm gonna use the full 1/2 cup. It's cake, so I want it to be really sweet. It is going to have icing on it, so maybe you could keep that in mind if you don't want it to be uber sweet, but I'm feeling like cake. Okay, and then we're also gonna add 1/8 teaspoon of salt. And the sugar is 1/2 cup. I just need to grab 1/2 cup. And now I can mix these two together. So I'm just gonna give this a little bit of a stir and try and break up these brown sugar clumps that I have in here. Okay, now I'm gonna add these in with my wet ingredients. And whisk it all together. And then once this is all whisked together, we're gonna pour it into our pan, which has already been greased. And we're gonna bake it. It says 27 to 30 minutes. So I'll start with the 27 and then see where it's at from there. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure this is kind of level. Okay, and it says to bake for 27 to 30 minutes. I'm gonna put it in the oven. Okay, and I'm gonna set a timer here for 27 minutes. And while that's cooking, we're also gonna make our icing. So you'll need powdered sugar, a couple more grapefruits, and then it also calls for 3 tablespoons of butter. I have melt vegan butter here. It's suggested using a vegan butter to keep the recipe vegan. Okay, so it says 3/4 to 1 cup of powdered sugar. So I'm gonna start with about 3/4 cup, and then we'll add more powdered sugar if we need to. I'm adding 3 tablespoons of butter. And then it says that we need 3 tablespoons of grapefruit juice. So I'm hoping I can get this just from 1. We'll see, I'll cut 1 and juice 1 more. This looks like it's already more than enough. Cool. And I'm just going to grab a fork to mix it all together. My butter has been sitting out on the counter for a little while, so it is pretty soft. It doesn't say to use softened butter, but I don't think you'll be able to mix it very well if you're not using softened butter. And it is feeling really thin, so I'm gonna add that other 1/4 cup of powdered sugar to make it a little bit thicker. And there we go. There's our icing. Okay, so we still have to wait another 24, 25-ish minutes until the cake is gonna be ready. So we'll just wait for that. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, hi everybody. So it's been 27 minutes here. So our cake is done after 27 minutes. It looks really done. The edges are just a little bit brown. It's like soft, but it's springing back. So I know it's cooked on the inside. It's still really, really hot. It looks like it's not sticking to the sides at all. You could probably dump it onto a cooling rack. But I'm just gonna try and cut out a piece and we'll see how that goes. So I'm just gonna cut out a corner piece. It smells super good. Our kitchen is smelling citrusy and delicious. Okay, there we go. It looks pretty dense. It looks pretty dense, but it is a vegan cake, so that's a little bit expected because it doesn't have as much risers in it. Okay, and I'm gonna put just a little bit of my icing on it. This icing is made from butter, so this cake is really hot, so I'm assuming that when I put it on there, it's all just kind of gonna like melt and pool to the side. If you want it to look pretty on top, then you should let your cake cool completely, then put the icing on and let it sit and let the icing harden. I'm putting the icing on a hot cake, so it's just gonna immediately melt. But it'll still taste sugary and buttery and delicious, and that's really what matters because I'm gonna eat it right away. Yeah, it's immediately melting and pooling off to the side. And then I'm gonna try it. Well, I'm gonna see if I can try it. It literally just came out of the oven, so the inside might still be 350 degrees, but we'll see if I can eat some. It smells super good. Yum, it is super good. You definitely want it with the icing on there. It is dense, like a vegan cake. You can taste the citrusiness of it. The added citrusiness from the icing is super good, and I think it's actually pretty necessary. I think something that you could do, I'm thinking of the Great British Bake Off now. I think something that you could do is turn the cake upside down in a glass pan and pour this icing on top of it and leave it for it to soak up all of the citrusy goodness. Because the cake itself, since it's so dense, I mean, it's still really, really good, but it definitely needs the icing. So I think that's what I'm gonna do with the rest of this cake, is I'm gonna pour the icing on top of it and just let it sit in here and see how it does once it absorbs all of it. But it turned out really good. Good job.